This is Road Noise, episode number 17. How to finish what you've started and why it's important. Welcome back into another episode of Road Noise. I'm your host, Michael Blackston. If you're wondering what that rumble is under the sound of my voice, that's the sound of the road, hence the name Road Noise. You're riding along with me in the passenger seat as I travel this morning all the way into Carbon Hill, Alabama. It's on toward the western side of Alabama, going on I-20 west this morning, going to be passing through Birmingham. And right now I just came through Atlanta, and I've got a good little stretch, and it's time to record another podcast. It's funny, every single time it seems like lately that I've recorded one of these episodes, I've told you that I'm sick. And then I'll feel better and I'll start looking forward to doing another episode, and by the time comes to open up the microphone, I'm sick again. I don't know what it is. It's just this year has been hard for me. I keep getting these colds and stuff like that. I think I've got it figured out. I think what's going on is my daughter is going on 3 years old. She'll be 3 in April, and she hasn't been in daycare until recently. The beginning of this year, we put her in daycare, and it's just... they'll tell you, if you've got a child in daycare, they bring home everything that every other kid has, and I think that's what's happening because I cannot shake it. In fact, she's been sick this week. Yesterday, she had to stay home from daycare. We had to, the night before last, take her to the urgent care late at night because she started running 103-degree temperature, and, she's 2.5 years old. Can't have that going on. It turns out she had a double ear infection, and I don't think that's catching. I don't think that it was caused by anything that's viral or anything like that, so that I don't think has anything to do with what I've got. I don't guess. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't know about that type of stuff. But anyway, I don't feel great this morning, but it's okay. I'm going to get through it, and hopefully soon in the next few podcasts I'll be able to say, hey, I feel great this morning. But that's life, isn't it? We have to kind of struggle through whatever we got going on and put a smile on our face and say, you know what, I woke up this morning, I've got another breath of life, and I'm blessed for that. So that's the attitude I'm going to have going into the day. And I think that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. I want to mention a couple of things that are going to be different a little bit about this podcast. If you're a regular listener, it's not going to change all that much. It's just kind of the way I'm going to do things is a little bit differently. I had noticed by looking at some of the previous episodes I had thought after looking at some of the previous episodes, it might be good, and you'll notice that I've split the titles up into 3 different subjects, and I've kind of broken the whole podcast up into 3 little different subjects I wanted to talk about each time. Because I didn't think you'd want me to prattle on and on and on about the same thing for 45 minutes to an hour. But as I've looked, and here's where I've noticed something, I've looked at the statistics and the download numbers and stuff, and the downloads that tend to have the most downloads, the episodes, I should say, that have the most downloads are the ones where I have one topic that is something that you can relate to. And whereas I do want this to be an audio journal or an audio diary, I guess you would say, I want it to be about my life. I don't want to turn this into a self-help guru type thing, because I am by no means anywhere in the ballpark of being considered a guru. I don't want it to be another cookie cutter show like everything else you hear in podcasting, where somebody has a topic and they're going to help you get through it. At the same time, I want to be valuable to you. I want this to be a show that not only you can enjoy hearing about my life, but that it brings value. So while I'm not going to try to just choose a topic that will grow the numbers, I am going to stay, I think, generally on one main topic. That doesn't mean I'm not going to talk about other things, because when interesting things happen in my life, I'm going to talk about them. But I'm going to try to stay on one topic, because I think it's going to be better to give you something that is quality and helpful to you than is just quantity and fluff. Yeah, I want it to be entertaining, but I want there to be some value to this as well, is what I'm trying to say. So that's how I'm going to take the show. That's the direction I think I want to go. And I'll just talk about my life as things happen, and I'll tell you the events and interesting things that happen. But the topics that I stay on, or the topics that I kind of focus on in each episode, are not things I have pulled out of the air. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go through, I'm not going to get online and say list of podcast topics to talk about. I'm not going to do that. These are all things that are coming from my experience. So it still is the heart of what I have always wanted for the Road Noise podcast. It's all stuff that's coming from my experience. These are things that I know a little bit about, and so I'm going to see if any of the stuff that I've learned in life, living it 1 mile at a time, if it's something that I can use in this podcast to talk about that you can not only find interesting, but find valuable. So that's where we're going to go with it. And I was going to go a different topic earlier in the week when I was trying to decide what I wanted to talk about, and I had decided I was going to get a main topic. I wrote down a list of some very important topics that I'm going to talk about. And some of the topics that are coming in future episodes are living with someone who suffers from clinical depression. My wife suffers from clinical depression, and there was a time in our marriage where she wasn't on any medication for it, and we didn't recognize what she was going through and what was happening to her mentally. We didn't recognize it for what it was. And I'm not going to go into any more detail right now. I did ask her before I mentioned any of this. I asked her, in fact, I think it was yesterday, or the day before. I think it was the day before yesterday. Anyway, I asked her if it was okay to talk about it. She said, yeah. I asked her if she wanted me to wait till maybe she could record an episode in the car with me and be a part of it. She said no, that she trusted me. And so we're going to talk about that. And so if you know somebody who is suffering from clinical depression, or you're somebody who is trying to live with someone, I've got a lot of wisdom to share about that. And I'm going to have an entire episode about that. I'm also going to talk about trying to raise a child with ADHD without medication. That is a big deal. That kind of gets into some theological stuff with me. It gets into just some ways I feel very strongly about. I'm going to talk about that because I'm dealing with that. My son has been diagnosed as ADHD professionally, not just by somebody who says, he's ADHD. No, he's been checked out and evaluated, and he is moderately ADHD, and we're dealing with that. So I'm going to be talking about that in a future episode. I've got a lot of experience when it comes to living with a family member, or dealing with family members, I would more accurately say, who have addictions. And that will be an episode, but also I'm going to do an entire episode on the addiction to pornography, which I know a lot about because I have struggled with that for a long time as well. And I'm going to open up about that finally. I've talked about it a couple of times. I'm going to give some detail, not any of the gory, dirty details that go along with that, but I'm going to open up and be honest and authentic about my addiction to pornography coming up in an episode very soon. So those are just some of the things I want to talk about. They're not all going to be heavy, but they are all going to be things that I have experience with and that I hope will be helpful to you if it's something that you're looking for a little more information on, or maybe a little more insight into. So what are we talking about today then, Michael? Because one of those was one of the ones I was going to talk about in this episode, and I decided not to. I am a part of a writer's Facebook group. I recently looked into some Facebook groups for writers because I've gotten heavily back into writing with my blog. I'm trying to promote my blog. By the way, if you'd like to go take a look at my blog, it's michaelblackston.wordpress.com. at this time, that's the way to go to it. I do have a michaelblackston.com website coming up soon. I have that domain name purchased, but I don't have a website built for it yet. I'm getting ready to do that. But I'm blogging, and I'm releasing 2 a week now, and I'm trying to keep that on a consistent basis, and I want that to grow. And I'm also writing the novel version of my play, Mr. Long Said Nothing. I just started that, and I wanted to be involved with some like-minded people in some groups. And so I went to Facebook and I looked for a writers group, and I found a couple of writers groups. I found about 3 of them that I asked to join. 2 of them approved me, and one of them posed a question. One of the group members yesterday posed a question to other people who had experience, and the response to this young lady's question was a lot of people responded. I was one of the first ones, but it just kept coming. I kept getting dinged all day long by responses to this lady's question, and the question was all about being able to finish what you start. And the long and short of it was, she said she has a problem starting stories, novels, short stories, whatever she's doing. I think she's trying to write novels. She has a problem starting them, but then she'll get an idea for another one, and the idea is so strong and she gets so excited about it that she lays it down. She lays down what she was working on for the new project, and she never finishes anything because she always gets distracted by something new. Well, I've got some experience in that because I've struggled with that all my life as an artist and as a writer. Well, a writer is a form of art, obviously, but I do visual art and I'm a writer, and I've had trouble with that exact thing in both of those areas. So I lent her a really kind of in a nutshell version of the podcast episode you're about to hear. And a lot of people seem to really like that advice and told me so. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this is something that people need to hear. I know a lot of people are struggling with it as an artist, and maybe not even as an artist. I guess you could apply this to your own life. I'm going to use art as kind of what I'm going to center this entire thing around, but it's not necessarily something that is only a tendency for artists. I think it can apply to everyday life. So I've titled it How to Finish What You've Started, but then I've also tagged it with and why it's important. Because I've recorded episodes of other podcasts where I've talked about this thing. I talked about it a little bit in my now defunct podcast, Q1 Go, the theater show. I think I talked about it a little bit there, not really heavily, but I dedicated an entire episode of the Everything Arts podcast, which was my very first podcast that I started. I dedicated an entire episode to this, and now that you can find it, but it's just not in an active RSS feed, I figured it might be good to go ahead and do it again. And I'm going to be hitting this topic a lot as I deal with artists in the upcoming podcast that I'm developing called The Artist Brainstorm. It just isn't a problem that a lot of people have, and especially artists, because we're creative, and every time a new idea comes up, it's like, if you're not an artist, I don't really know how to make this relate, but I think you'll get my point. A writer, there is nothing more beautiful to a writer than a blank notebook. There is nothing more beautiful to a visual artist than a blank sheet of paper to draw on, or a blank canvas, because that pristine, unmarked area to work on is all promise. There have been no mistakes. There are no erase marks. It's nothing but hope and promise of what can possibly be done in that space. And because those things are so beautiful and so alluring, when you get an idea, that's basically what that idea That's how you visualize it. If I get an idea for a new story, I don't visualize an entire plot, although I kind of get the entire plot in my mind and how things are going to happen. But if I've got a new story, all I can see is that white computer screen with nothing written on it yet, and the possibility of starting that first sentence and what all's going to come after it. If I have an idea for a painting or a drawing, all I can see is that white canvas in my mind and the very first stroke. It's kind of like, remember when you were a kid? Remember when you were sick and tired of school and summer vacation came? You couldn't wait to get out for the summertime. But then a few weeks in, you'd played all day, every day, or whatever you did, and you started looking forward to school again, and your mom took you, or your dad, your parents took you to get all of your new school supplies, your brand new school supplies, and you couldn't wait to go and write in that brand new notebook for the first time. Now, the next day it might not have been quite as exciting, or maybe it was, but as the days and the weeks went on, the excitement for writing in those notebooks and using those pencils, it slowly waned, or for some of you, it may have quickly waned. It's a very similar process when it comes to a new idea with an artist, whether you're a writer or a visual artist. You can't wait to get started, but once you get started, then you're stuck with the responsibility of finishing it. The problem is, for so many of us, when the new idea comes along, it's too distracting to take our mind off of, and we drop what we're working on in favor of the new project. Because the new project is exciting. The new project, you're not slogging through it. You're not trying to figure stuff out. It's all promise and it's all hope. I suffered from that for years. And it's not something you're not aware of. You know it's a problem. You just don't know how to fix it. Well, I'm here to tell you how I fixed it. And it came with some words of wisdom from a dear friend of mine who at the time was in high school. You don't think of, when you're in your late 30s, that, and I'm in my early 40s now, but at the time that I got this wisdom, I was in my late 30s. You don't think of someone in their late 30s getting schooled by someone still in high school with wisdom that they have that you don't. But it happened, and it changed my life. So let me give you a brief story of how I learned to focus on finishing a project. I'm going to tell you the story of how this piece of wisdom came to mind, how I made a decision to start a project and finish it, and to always have that be the way I did things. And then I'm going to give you some visual aid that I use to kind of help keep all of those new, shiny, spangly ideas in check. Because there is a way you can do it. It's all a mindset. It's all the way you look at things, and it's all the way you decide to handle each day. And so I'm going to tell you this story first, and then we'll go on through there. And one thing that's going to be different also about this show now, in the past I have not done show notes. Honestly, I hate doing show notes. I like recording the podcast. I like talking. I like the editing process. But I can't stand having to do show notes and having show notes for every show. I tried to do that at first with Q1 Go, and I had extensive show notes at first, and they got shorter and shorter and shorter until it got to the point where I was like, well, this is an entertainment show, and unless I'm doing something that's extremely educational, there's no need to do show notes. And when I came over to the Road Noise podcast and began it, I thought, well, this is just all about my life. There's no point in doing show notes. And that's been fine the way I've been handling it. But now I'm going to be doing stuff that is topical for you, and you may need to use some of the resources that I'm offering. And so I'm going to have show notes available. So the things that you're going to hear are going to be available as show notes, and I'm considering making a little bit of a kind of a short one-page PDF Cliff Notes version of all this that you can download and keep with you. We'll see. Anyway, let's jump to the story. All my life, I've been a writer. Among all of the other things I've done, I sing, I act, I draw, I paint. I've always had a love for creating worlds on paper. And like everybody, I've started the great American novel a million times. I mean, as a kid, I started novels as early as 5th grade. I remember the very first novel I tried to write. I decided I was going to write it in 5th grade, and it was called The Eyes of Janet Malone. And the story was going to be all about this young girl, probably about my age at the time, I think, who was bullied and she could do things with her eyes. She look at something and make it move. Now, I've since learned that's called telekinesis, and I also, after that, learned that there was this little book about a girl in high school who was bullied who could move things with her mind, a little thing called Carrie by Stephen King. It wasn't exactly an original idea, but I was in 5th grade, and it was called The Eyes of Janet Malone, and I remember writing on that and deciding I was going to be a novelist, and it was going to be my first one. And there have been a million of them since then. And it always happened the same way. I'd start it, I'd be excited about it, and then my excitement petered out, or more likely, something shiny caught my attention and I wanted to start that. Well, when you get into your late 30s and your early 40s, you start thinking, is there ever going to be something that I can say I finished? Am I ever going to be able to leave, at least for my children, if I'm never published ever? Is there ever going to be something I can leave as a legacy that says, I did this, I finished it, I wrote a novel, I wrote a play? In my case, that I'm going to tell you about now in this story, it was a play. And we had directed a show called Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. That's a mouthful. It's a show by Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's one of his first, if not his first show. And it's a very popular one for churches and community theaters to do. And we had done it at our community theater, and we were having the cast party. No, I take it back. I keep saying it was during Joseph, and it was not during Joseph, because this guy that I'm about to tell you about wasn't in Joseph. For some reason, I keep wanting to say it was that show, and it was not. In fact, in the director's notes, I think I said that, and that was inaccurate during the show. Anyway, it was Noises Off. Noises Off, I want to say, was written by an author named Michael Thane, I think is his name. And it was a British comedy, kind of a farcical comedy, and it was fun. That's the one we were doing, and I did not direct that one. I was just in it. But we were at the cast party. That's the most important piece of this information. And my friend was in high school, and he played one of the main characters, and I was telling him about a play that I'd had in mind for the past almost 20 years at that time. It was called Mr. Long Said Nothing. And everybody that I had ever given the synopsis to had said, that is a fantastic idea. I can't wait to see it. And in my mind, I was writing this play. So when I would deliver the synopsis or tell people about it, I never said I have an idea. I always said, I'm writing a play. I'm writing this play. Well, jump forward several months, and I was laying in a hotel room in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, because I travel, and I was etching in South Carolina at the time. And my friend called me, and he said, Michael, I am about to compete in a literary competition for the school, And I think it'd be really neat to deliver a monologue from something that's never been published, from a new show that nobody's ever heard before. I would love to do something from Mr. Long Said Nothing. If you've got a script I could read, I would love to pick out a scene from that. If I think it's something I could use, would you mind it? Well, I said, I'm sorry, I don't have any scenes. There are no scenes yet for it. And he said, I thought you were writing a play. And I said, I am writing a play. And my friend said, very wisely for his age, something to the effect of, until you've got something on paper, you're not writing anything. You have an idea. Now, I know this isn't exactly about starting and finishing, seemingly, but it was for me because I had started Mr. Long years ago. Years ago, I got about a little less than a quarter of the way through a script for it. And I moved, and I lost that script in a move. I have since found a couple of those pages, but not all of it. But I lost the script in a move, and I never went back to it. So in essence, I had started something that I had not finished. And it would have been one thing if I was saying, yeah, I used to be writing this play and I never finished it. But it was fresh. I was going to have to start from the beginning, and I was telling people I was doing this, and I was not. And something kicked in my mind that night. I told him I was sorry, wish I could help him, and I hung up the phone. And a light bulb went off for me, or came on for me. And I finally said to myself, Michael, if you're ever going to do something with your art, with your life, in this medium, in this genre, quit talking about it. Quit starting things that you never finish. Make a plan. Make a commitment. Start it. If you're really going to write this play, start it. And finish it. And then I knew right away that if I did that, there were going to be other things that came up in my mind that tried to charm me away from Mr. Long Said Nothing. But I decided at that moment that was the top priority for me, was to write that play. Whether it ever saw a stage or not, to write that play, get it done, and have it. That way I could no longer say I'm writing a play. I can say I've written a play. I have a script. Because people were excited about the story, and I loved telling them about it. I didn't want to tell anybody about it any longer without telling them the truth. And that changed my life. I left the hotel. I put on my clothes, because if I'm in a hotel room, I'm in my underwear. I'm just going to be honest with you. If I'm by myself. I put on some clothes. I went down to the corner Walgreens or whatever kind of store like that it was. I don't remember. And I bought a pen and a notebook. One of those black and white speckled composition notebooks with a place where you can write the subject on the front. And on the front, I wrote Mr. Long Said Nothing, Book 1, because I knew it was going to take more than one composition notebook to write this out. And at the time, I didn't have a good computer to start writing on, so I knew I was going to need to write it out longhand, because I wanted to always have it with me. I didn't want to be anywhere where I couldn't write it when the inspiration hit. So I took a notebook, decided to write it out longhand. I found a quiet place where I could get some coffee, or maybe it was somewhere where someone would bring me some sweet tea and keep refilling my glass. Somewhere quiet where I could concentrate. And I opened that composition notebook, and I wrote on the first page, Mr. Long Said Nothing, Act 1, Scene 1. And I began to write. And I, for the first time in my life, focused on nothing project-wise except Mr. Long Said Nothing until it was complete. About 4 to 6 months later, I can't remember exactly, and I'm talking about both drafts. I always do a first draft and get the story out there, then I go back and I tone it up. I chisel it. It's kind of like a sculptor who gets the basic shapes and images out first and gets it done, and then they go back and then start smoothing everything out and chipping away little by little until they get exactly the sculpture that they want. It was the same thing with the story, and I was finished with my final draft after about 6 months. I could say I was finished. It changed my life. I was so excited after 20 years of talking about a play I had in mind. I had a script. I had something that I could hand any director and say, go get yourself a cast, you can do this. That's exactly what happened, by the way, except I was the director. My good friend Tony King, who was also my co-host for Q1 Go when we had that podcast, I offered to let her read it, and she loves to read, and she was interested, so she gladly read it. And she called me up one day. She manages the historic Elbert Theater in Elberton, Georgia, and she said, Michael, we've got this thing coming up in September on the square in Elberton, and the theater is right off of the square. And she said, there's this festival coming, and it's going to be hot, and people are going to be wanting somewhere where they can come in and sit down and get something cold to drink and maybe sit down in the air conditioning for a couple of hours and take a load off. What would you think about having a public reading of Mr. Long Said Nothing at the theater and make that something people can do during that festival? And I said, wow, you liked it that much? She said, yeah. So we put together, at first the idea was to do a round table discussion kind of thing, or not a discussion, but a round table presentation of the script with actors. We just put up a table, sit around it, or sit at it in a line facing the audience and read it that way. That's the way a lot of that is done. But I said, no, if people are going to come and spend a couple of hours in the theater, we need to give them something that makes sense, sort of like a play. So I got my cast together, people who were volunteering to be a part of this read-through, and I asked them to come on the Thursday night. We were going to present this on a Saturday afternoon, and I asked them to come on a Thursday night and let's block it. Just kind of walk through and block it as if we're doing the show script in hand. And during that, I played the part of Mr. Long. Well, that went very well. We had several people there, and more than I thought would end up showing up. And there was a question and answer period afterward. And it blew my mind when people started saying, when are you going to put this show on? This was great. We enjoyed this. We'd really enjoy seeing a full produced version of this show. And I told them at the time that just kind of depended on the theater. If they ever decided they wanted to do it, that I would be happy to do it, but that it wasn't up to me. I got a phone call a few days later, Tony King again, and said, we've got dates in June available. Would you like to do your show? Would you like to produce Mr. Long Said Nothing? And it blew my mind, because here we are. I finally finished something, and it's not just sitting on a shelf. Guys, it was going to be fully produced. I was going to direct it, but I was going to get to select a group of people, actors, to bring my story to life. And to this day, that is some of the most amazing time I have ever spent. And it, like I said, it changed my life. None of that would have ever happened had I not had the conversation with my friend. And he had just laid it out for me honestly and said, You need to get your butt in gear and either write it or don't, but quit saying you're doing it because you're not. And he wasn't mean, he wasn't gruff with me like that. He was friendly and conversational as we are with our friends, but I got the point. And it changed my life because from that moment, I focused on that one thing. That was my priority. I made a commitment that that was my priority. And from that moment on, I wrote that show, finished it. And all of a sudden, people want to have something to do with it. Now, I'm not saying that if you write a play, you're going to ever find a stage. There are playwrights who have written 100 plays and still none of them have ever had the fortune to find a stage. I knew the right people and was at the right place at the right time. Fortunately for me, as this recording goes on, because Mr. Long, when we did produce it, we had a 6-show run, and while there weren't an amazing amount of people that came because nobody had ever heard of the show before, the ones that did come loved it. It was a hit with them. And so now that theater is not guaranteeing me a stage every time I write a play, but they are willing to read the script and pretty much schedule a time for me to produce my shows. I have a theater that will do that unless they read the script and just don't like it or don't have the time. Like I say, they're not guaranteeing it, but it is basically there for me. And again, I'm not saying that that's going to be the case for you, but what I am saying is it never would have happened for me that way had I not finished it. It would still be something I was talking about, or a script that was halfway done. You can't move forward until you do something to completion in this field. In any project you start, it's not going to move forward without you completing your projects. It's just going to be floating around undone. So through all of this, I came up with a visual. I decided that I needed to corral all of my ideas. I couldn't have them just kind of shining and always in my peripheral vision and flashing in front of my face while I was trying to concentrate on one other thing at a time. How could I wrangle these things and keep them fresh, but at the same time have control over them? And I decided to look at them in a different way. I gave myself a visual. I built a pond, a large fish pond in my mind. And in my mind, I don't know where this came from. I don't know if I've ever seen this pond before, but I actually see a fish pond in my mind when I think about it. And all of my ideas are fish swimming around in that pond. Oh, they're swimming around in there all kind of crazy. I mean, there's no order to them in that pond, but they're contained in there. They're not all flopping around on the shore driving me crazy, and I'm trying to get a handle on each one. No, they're swimming around in the pond. They're happy. They're fresh. They're lively. They're living. But they're there, contained in that pond. When it's time to start a project, I go to the pond, I target the fish that I want, and I take my net and fish it out. And that's my project that I work on to completion, and I don't go back to that pond. The only time I step back over to the pond is when a new idea comes and it's time to corral it. It's time to put it in the pond. I'll go back over there, throw it in the pond, let it swim around with the other fishes. Now, just because it's a new idea doesn't mean it's the next idea. This pond is full. I have a lot of ideas. So what you have to do when it comes time to making a decision for your new project, you have to decide what is the best for you at that time. What are you most inspired by? And what needs to take top priority? Then you take your mental net, you fish it out, and you complete that project. That way, you're not going to the pond every day, fishing out something new, then throwing it back, fishing out another one, throwing it back, and nothing ever gets finished. When you do that, your idea pond does nothing but get crowded more and more. And it gets to the point where you can't handle it all. It's too big a load to bear, and you get frustrated, and you get insecure and downtrodden, and you think, I'll never finish anything. But if you finish each project that you fish out of your idea pond, it doesn't go back in. The pond stays lively. You don't have to worry about it. Now, there may be other things you do. For instance, with Mr. Long Said Nothing, I do try to push it. I do try to see if there's other theaters. Right now, there's only been one, and I haven't made a red cent on it, and that's not the point. The point is it's done and it's ready to go. So there are little periphery things I've got to do to take care of that now that it is something that I have at my disposal, but that just means I've got something available. But it's finished. I don't have this play floating around in the pond that's getting more and more crowded because I can't finish it and I keep throwing it back. No. I fished her out, finished it, and it's done. So you don't have to use an idea pond if you don't want to. That's not how you have to look at things, but it worked for me. I've got a car here desperately trying to get by. I mean, that dude is all up in the car in the other lane's tailpipe. So I'm just wanting to try to explain to you how it changed my life when I made this concept a reality. When I decided I'm going to prioritize one project at a time, no matter how pretty, no matter how shiny, no matter how excited I am about the new fish, it goes in the pond. And when it's time to go back and choose a new project, if that new shiny fish is the one that I find is the top priority, then by all means I'll fish it out, and that's the one I'll work on to completion. It changed my life. I keep saying that. But now I understand things in a whole different way. I understand the power. There are two phrases that are 6 letters each that are very powerful. If you're a writer, that phrase is the end. When I wrote Mr. Long Said Nothing and I finished it, whenever I write a play now, or anything I write to completion, I put my name at the bottom, the date, the time. But before I do that, after the very last piece of prose, or dialogue, or stage direction, depending on what I'm writing, when it's done, I write the end. I can't tell you the feeling and the emotion and the pride, the exhilaration that washes over me when I write the end. In a previous episode of this podcast, I talked about my play Friends Like You, which I've just finished, and I talk about how exciting it was. In that episode, I had just finished that show. I recently finished the final draft of it, and it is in a director's hands now. And I talk about how being able to write the end is so powerful. If you're a visual artist, being able to sign your name at the bottom of your canvas, or whatever you're drawing on, and say these 2 words, again, 6 letters, I'm done. It's amazing to be able to cap off a project with the end, or I'm done. Those are powerful, powerful words. And I want you to feel the same exhilaration that I feel now when I'm able to use those. It's something to look forward to. And if you're one of those people who has a hard time finishing, think about that. I'll never get to write the end if I don't commit to finishing something. So what I want you to do is I want you to have a different mindset. I want you to start your day with a different mindset. As an artist, as a writer, whatever, from this moment on, I want you to wake up tomorrow morning. I want you to start right now, but starting right now and every day consecutively, I want you to wake up in the morning and say, I am a leader, and I have a mindset of forward motion. I'm moving forward. When you think about your creation, don't think about it as being in the middle of something surrounded by stuff you don't need to or you can't understand how to handle. Focus and concentrate on forward motion. If you're a writer, today I'm going to move my story forward and get excited about that, because every step forward is a closer step toward the end. Every stroke you paint is another step forward, closer to signing that bad boy and saying, I'm done. Have a mindset every morning when you wake up, a positive mindset of moving forward with your creation, not being overwhelmed by all of it around you, surrounded by this story or this painting. I'm moving forward. Think positive thoughts when it comes to your creativity. And I called you a leader because think of this. There are two types of people. There are leaders and there are followers. Followers don't create anything. Followers do the work of the leaders, or they gawk at the leaders. That's not a bad thing. Some people are built that way, but some people are creative enough to build something new, to create something new. And I really feel we're leaders. I feel we're leaders because we are the ones putting something out for the others to enjoy and follow. That's why popular artists and popular writers have fans. That's why people follow them. They're leaders in their field. I want you to be a leader in your field. And remember, when you do that, you don't have to be the most popular person in the world. You don't have to be the richest person in the world. Being a leader is a mindset. It's saying, I'm going to create, and I'm going to deliver, and I'm going to finish. And remember that you're leading by example. There are other people looking up to you, people who would want to be like you if you finish something. People who hear that you're a writer or an artist, they want to see. They look up to you. Wow, they're writing something. If you're going to offer that up as a piece of creative work that you are working on, then you got to follow through with it because they are expecting it. And you, by not finishing, are saying it's not important to finish. It's not important to focus and prioritize. It's okay to jump from one thing to another. And I'm not saying that those are evil things. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you'll never know the value of finishing something as it comes to leading by your example. The power that you have by finishing something and then having a story to tell about it. I really don't know how much more to say about this other than just kind of reiterating what I've said before. My life has been changed. I've said that over and over in this episode, but I mean it. And it's the type of statement that it's hard to stop saying because it builds excitement, because it's been changed for the better. For so long, I had this mindset of I can't finish anything. It's frustrating. That happiness and that delight at the new shiny object. One podcaster calls them weapons of mass distraction. I think that's John Lee Dumas. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's not my clever little quip. It's somebody else's. But it's true. It will completely cause a war within yourself when it comes to trying to be creative and trying to get something done. You don't want a war. You have to take control of it and say, there's not going to be a war between my ideas. I got a handle on it, and I'm making a commitment. I kind of started feeling like a parent to these ideas, because sometimes something's not working, and it's an idea that you have to just scrap. Like the podcast that Tony King and I just finished up. After a year, it was hard for me to do the editing process and do the finalization and put the music bed under it where we said goodbye for the final time. Capping that off and saying, it's over. When it could have kept going, but we had to stop it because it just wasn't working. It felt like killing my baby. I've scrapped artwork before that I put time into that I knew I had to scrap because it wasn't working. It's like killing your children. Well, if it is working, you owe it to those ideas. You owe it to your creativity, to your muse, to see it to the end. That's the way I look at it. Now, some of the suggestions when this person on the Facebook group was asking about what can I do, I basically did a nutshell of this right here, what I've just spent an hour talking about. Other people mentioned putting stuff down for a while and coming back to it. There is wisdom in that as well. I don't want to make it sound like you cannot lay something down. Sometimes, if you get to a stopping point and you can't figure out what to do, sometimes it is best to lay it down and do something else for a while. But that's not going to the shiny new object. That's making an executive's decision in your mind. That's using some strategy. Knowing all the time that you're coming back. The problem is when you lay that down because something else is shiny. Not because you need to go away from it for a while to refresh your mind, but because something else looked better on the other side of the fence. And then you start that, and then something else looked better on the other side of the fence, so that just a few steps down the road, the first thing you were working on is forgotten. Gathering dust. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. If you do lay it down, have a plan for coming back to it. Set yourself some goals that you know you can reach. There are all kinds of different ways to do it. These were things that were also mentioned in this thread that was advice for this young lady. I saw one person say, give yourself a word goal per day. I tried that. Didn't work for me. It may work for you. It's a good idea. A lot of people do that. And a lot of serious writers set themselves word goals and page goals for a day. It's all about discipline. It's all about commitment and responsibility to your craft. Take control. Be serious about it. Decide whether or not you're going to be someone who dabbles in art or someone who is an artist. That is my episode of Road Noise for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was something you could take something away from. If you're an artist, I think it's valuable information, at least maybe some encouragement. It can be done. I did it, and it I'm going to say it again. It changed my life. I hope you can tell in my voice how excited I am about the prospect. By the way, I just started novelizing Mr. Long Said Nothing. I have some plans for that, and that's what I'm doing now. Nothing else until Mr. Long Said Nothing, the novel, is done. I'm in shows, and I have life that I live and stuff like that. I'm doing The Addams Family, the musical, right now, but I'm talking about projects of my creation. I hope this was helpful for you. If you have something you'd like to add or something you'd like to agree or disagree with me with, I'd love to hear from you. I really, really covet your feedback. One of the reasons that Q1 Go ended up having to go away was because we couldn't get any feedback from anybody. And in that particular niche, it requires that you get some feedback because you run out of ideas. And Tony and I ran out of ideas. Now, this I'm not going to run out of ideas for, because this is just all about my life and my experiences and stuff. So I'm not expecting that to happen with Road Noise, but I am telling you that your feedback is paramount to the way I feel about this show. I want to know that you're out there. I want to know you like it. I want to know you're listening, and I want to know your thoughts, your critiques. I want to know. I want to make a relationship with you, because if you're going to be riding along with me in the passenger seat, you and I need to be friends. So here's how you can get in touch with me. I have a hotline. It's 706-389-0401. That's 706-389-0401. You can also get in touch with me via email at roadnoisepodcast@gmail.com. That's roadnoisepodcast@gmail.com. You can get there by going straight from whatever email source you use, or you can go to the contact page on the website. And the website is www.roadnoisepodcast.com. Also, if you'd like to read my comedy blog, I have that. You can go to the blog button on the website, or you can just type in your search bar or your, the bar that you find websites on, there on your computer or wherever, smartphone. You just type in michaelblackston.wordpress.com and you'll go to my blog. And I would also love to hear from you there. If you've listened to this because you saw something about art in the tagline and you'd like to be involved with my Facebook group that I administrate, we'd love to have you. There's a Facebook group called facebook.com/myeverythingarts. At least that's the address you want to go to. But My Everything Arts is the Facebook group that I officiate, and we have a good group of about 100 people there, and I'd like to grow it. And we're kind of a family there, and if you would like to be a part of that, come join. I'll have to approve you, but as long as you're not doing anything that's not family friendly, there shouldn't be any problem with that. Or if you're spammer or a robot or something like that, I'm not going to approve you. But if you're an artist, come on in, and I'd love to have you. And other than that, let's call this an episode. My voice, as you can tell, is weak. I'm still trying to heal. I covet your prayers. I hope you'll keep me in your prayers and in your thoughts as far as healing goes. I'm about to be doing some etching in some very cold places for the next couple of days, and but I love what I do. So until next time, I'm Michael Blackston. Thanks for sitting in the passenger seat beside me for Road Noise as we learn to live life 1 mile at a time.